In spite of the subprime mortgage crisis, we've seen NASDAQ go up over 300 points. We've seen the hottest tech IPO market we've seen in years. I think 60 technology companies have gone public.
When the stats come out, the venture financing activity in 2007 will be very, very high.
There's a rich pipeline of companies that are in this sort of hyper growth phase. They're doing 50, 60, 70 million, but they're growing 50, 60, 70%. And that's what's pretty exciting.
I don't think it'll have a lasting effect. I mean, the economy's big, it's resilient. I think you've seen a shift to technology as a result, because if you sort of the last sector, the companies, if you look at Q3, there hasn't been too many profit warnings from tech companies. Generally fairly healthy, generally doing okay.
M&A is up, and public comps are up, and the ability now for some of these large market cap players on the public side to make big acquisitions is something that wasn't really available 4 or 5 years ago.
From a macro level perspective, things are healthy. There's earnings growth. There's good fundamentals. And if that continues, I wouldn't be surprised to see valuations sort of stay and hold steady.
The market is very jitterish right now, as everybody sees, and that we believe will have some ramification on the near term in IPO activity. However, what we have seen is an extended open window for tech IPOs that has been very encouraging.
The number of handsets that are out there worldwide is phenomenal. The capabilities of these handsets are they really look like computers these days. The bandwidth is increasing. It's clearly not what we're seeing in the broadband space, but it's getting there with 3G, with things like WiMAX.
It's tremendously successful, whether you measure it by the infrastructure or whether you measure it by applications.
Users vote with what they spend their time with, and I think you saw that with MySpace, you see that with Facebook, and you see that with World of Warcraft and Club Penguin, and a lot of these other companies that are getting significant traction to the extent where they rival Hollywood movies and films and TV. The hardest thing to do on the web is to attract a critical mass of users and eyeballs. And the companies that can do that provide a compelling value proposition, whether that be fun, entertainment, or games, will be the leaders.
I think the software market right now is actually incredibly dynamic and interesting. There's just gobs of venture money that are going into consumer internet and green technology. And I look around at most large corporations and say, my God, these guys have so much room for new ways to drive revenue growth, new ways to get efficient, new ways to cut costs.
Well, I've been focused on enterprise software and communications for a long time, and we've been talking about the melding of those two for 2 decades, and really in the last 2 years we've started to see something interesting. I think your desktop computer in the future is going to look a lot more like this than it does a box today, or even a pizza box today, where you'll actually just set it down and either the Bluetooth connection or a wired connection or something like that will allow you a high bandwidth connection into the network, and a virtualized computer sitting on a server will be where all your activity is.
If you just look at what went public this year, you'll see lots of traditional, high-tech building block companies. There are plenty of nuts and bolts businesses, infrastructure businesses. We had a company, Data Domain, go public earlier this year. It's a storage appliance.
We think the VMware IPO is really should be a ringing of the bell, reminding people enterprise is still an interesting space.
The public demand for clean tech investing is high and is getting higher. 3 biggest opportunities that I see in clean tech right now are transportation, energy storage, and energy efficiency.
I think we're going to see money coming from sources we never expected. We'll see it from electric utilities. We'll see it from major oil companies. We'll see it from semiconductor companies looking at ways to get the per unit cost down in solar.
10 years ago, people used to say, buy my product because it's environmentally friendly. And now there will be companies that will say, buy my product because it's not just environmentally friendly, but it's cost effective and it competes with other products out there.
We saw, electric vehicles in California in the EV1 General Motors era. We saw Ford react to that through an acquisition. There have been opportunities for GE and Philips and major lighting companies to buy solid-state lighting companies. because they realize that the 132-year-old incandescent light bulb that they've been putting on store shelves for that long isn't viable for a long-term sustainable planet. So those three factors, the cost of energy, energy independence, and managing the climate, are the three things that kind of are making a perfect storm.
Every one of us, the coverage officers within our firm at least, have spent a considerable amount of time in China. Whether you talk about semiconductors, services, internet, communications, there is a tremendous amount of activity over there. And I would divide it amongst two areas. One is true globalization, where you have emerging Chinese-based companies or European companies that are catering to customers throughout the world. But as importantly will be the category killers within China. If you're the eBay of China, or if you're the EMC of China, or the Amazon of China, that in and of itself represents a truly unique and large opportunity for business, for us as an advisor or a capital raiser.
There were more IPOs in China than there were in this country this year.
I actually think as you move into a global economic environment where even small firms are competing globally, you know, the technology side for business has got to catch up.
Some of our technologies that we're investing here are ones that are replacing aging infrastructure. And in some of the developing world, there's no infrastructure. So the barrier to put a new technology to work, say in China, like a solid-state light for a street lamp instead of a halogen or a gas lamp, is not in the way. So you can make an investment and your market can actually be ready for you.
There's nothing wrong with growth. Growth doesn't mean a bubble. Crazy valuations at 15 to 20 times revenue might constitute a bubble.
The energy markets, the transportation markets, the fuel markets, the lighting markets, those markets aren't going away. Can we get carried away inside those markets by putting too much capital to work in too many different technologies? Of course we can. Is that a bubble? Maybe. It's not pets.com.
Notwithstanding the market machinations of the last couple weeks or the last month or two, we are quite optimistic about the coming year and the opportunity for technology overall in the next several years.
It turns out that the internet didn't die. It was a mini crash, and yet the fundamentals of the internet have kept moving up dramatically.
We're just right. This is a Goldilocks environment right now, not too hot, not too cold.
You know, from a financial standpoint, it's really the return of the glory days. And I think it's cool that we're back in a period of time where entrepreneurs feel that they can run all the way through to the finish line and stay independent companies and go public and really try to build out their business models into real franchises.